Hello, everyone. Peace be upon all the good people out there. So we're back with another discussion. This is the third discussion. We're going to be talking about Eritrea before 1890. Last we spoke, we discussed Eritrea not having existed prior to 1890. Similarly, Ethiopia did not exist before since the beginning of time either, because the belief, there's the belief out there, it still exists, that Eritrea existed for centuries, and the belief that Ethiopia existed for centuries, but that's not true. We learned about Ethiopia not having come into existence as we know it until the 19th century. And that's true. If you look at the map, so you're going to tell me that Ethiopia, the Somali part of Ethiopia, was always a part of it? I don't think that, I wonder what the Somalis would have to say about that. So I wonder what if I'm not mistaken, 2 wars that Somalia fought against the Ethiopians over their land would have to say about that. So we made it to Eritrea before 1890. Okay, Eritrea before 1890. So last time we learned that Eritrea did not exist since the beginning of time. That's not true. And Ethiopia did not exist for forever, and it did not exist as people believe it to have existed, meaning for centuries. That's not true either. So Mr. Walde Jesus, he tells us in the last section, the last sentence that he tells us is that the Ethiopians had been raising not quite justifiable claims over Eritrea based on ancient history. So they were using ancient history using non-justifiable claims, while the Eritrean nationalists countered them by conjuring up symbolisms and historical references only applicable to parts of the territory that later made up today's Eritrea. Parts of the territory that later made up today's Eritrea. So that's what happened. Let's talk about Eritrea before 1890. Eritrea before 1890. Eritrea before 1890. The name Eritrea was given to this country in northeast Africa, that's where it's found, when it was declared Italian colony by King Umberto's royal decree of the 1st of January, 1890. So that was the birthday of Eritrea, is January 1st, 1890. But the name was not alien to the region. The name was not alien to the region. The Ptolemaic Greeks in the 3rd century BC called the waters of the zone Sinus Erythraeus, and later the Romans called it Mare Erythraeum. You can find this in the history of Eritrea by Usman Saleh Sabbe. Read that book. It's translated into English. You can find it online. It's translated into English. The History of Eritrea by Usman Saleh Sabbe. It's also written in Arabic. That's what it was written in originally, actually. Tarikh Eritrea by Uthman Saleh Sabbe. So that book, you can find information. I'm reading that book, by the way, and there are some things here and there which I found myself to disagree with, but he does a good job at telling the story, and he generally does a good job. So he was a very intelligent man. Uthman Sabbe was a very intelligent man, very smart, very intelligent man. So he was Saho, by the way, if I'm not mistaken. He was Saho, of the Saho group. Yeah, so the Romans called it Mare Erythraeum. That is today's Eritrean or Red Sea, whose southwestern littoral, present-day Eritrea, was the crossroad of migrations, commerce, and trade, and the hub of indigenous civilizations. That was the hub of indigenous civilizations. So that is today's Eritrean or Red Sea, whose southwestern littoral, present-day Eritrea, was the crossroad of migration. So the word Mare Erythraeum, Sinus Erythraeus, that was to refer to the sea, because mare. So if you were to, in Spanish, mar means sea, mar rojo means Red Sea. So here it's Mare Erythraeum, Erythraean Sea. That's what they called it. And so let's see. Uthman Saleh Sabbe, in the history of Eritrea, published in Beirut, Darul Masirah, and no date, page 28. Anyway, it is assumed, if I'm not mistaken, now these are Walde Yesus's words, it is assumed that Greek sailors could have named the sea after the reddish mosses afloat and in the banks. So Greek sailors could have named the sea after the reddish mosses afloat and in the banks. But ancient Greece also had an island called Eritrea, today's Euboea. Cape Eritrea exists in Crete today. Crete, C-R-E-T-E. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but so you see, Europeans, in any case, named the place. They're the ones, they give it these names. But Eritreans behave as if they're the ones who made it who shaped and formed Eritrea by hand. That's not true. Meaning the Eritrea that we're speaking of at this time, this Eritrea, this pre-1890 Eritrea. That's not true. It was a crossroad of migrations, commerce, and trade, and the hub of indigenous civilizations. Ancient records of about 3000 BC attest a flourishing trade between Egypt and this region. The kingdom of Punt of that early period, which remained dominant for 1,000 years until about 1000 BC, comprised most of modern Eritrea. You can find more about that in John Spencer's Ethiopia at Bay, Algonac, Michigan, USA, reference 1984, page 175. The ancient port of Adulis, near today's Massawa, was the capital of a political conglomeration in the area long before another city-state called Aksum was founded. So Adulis was a capital of a political conglomeration in the area long before another city-state called Aksum was founded. That's also found in the previous source by John Spencer. You can also take a look at Richard Sherman's Eritrea, The Unfinished Revolution, New York, Prager, 1980, page 4. The author of the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, the author of the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, an anonymous Greek traveler from Alexandria, Egypt, if I'm not mistaken. That's where my parents met, by the way, Alexandria. Recorded in about 60 AD, that Adulis was still an important commercial port exporting ivory, rhinoceros horns, something I don't support. Rhinoceri are going extinct because of this. Rhinoceros horns and skins, as well as east-west trade center, for ships from India, the Persian Gulf, and East Africa, bartering wheat, rice, sesame, cotton, and honey with traders from the Greco-Egyptian world, and the Arabian Peninsula. We can find more about this. So Trimmingham mentions this, I believe, in his perhaps in his Islam in Ethiopia, perhaps. Pages 35 and 214. Wilfred H. Schaff, translation of the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, New York, Longmans, published in New York by Longmans, 1912. And then you can find this talk of trade and what between traders from the Greco-Egyptian world and the Arabian Peninsula, trading with people, meaning Adulis being this commercial port city, or commercial port rather. You can find it in Sabbeh's book, The History of Eritrea, as well as Travaskis in his text that we mentioned earlier. So Travaskis is a well-known historian. I think either Travaskis or Trimmingham, one of these two people were, I believe, some government-related people from the UK. So, the Greek-speaking city-state of Adulis. Greek-speaking city-state of Adulis. Forgive me if I look up. I'm looking at the camera if I look at my screen, that's where I'm supposed to be looking for. Forgive me for that. The Greek-speaking city-state of Adulis, city-state of Adulis in the western Red Sea coast was a neighbor of other Sabian principalities or settled kingdoms in Akelugzai and Saraya provinces of today's Eritrea. You see, these are Sabian places, Sabaic. These are Sabian areas. I believe Taddese Tamrat calls the peoples there as Sabianized people. Sabianized. Taddese Tamrat in his book Church and State in Ethiopia. That book is a very, very interesting book. I encourage everyone to read that book. If you're from Eritrea and Ethiopia, wherever you're from in this world, read your history. Read your history. Don't just take, as in Arabic they say, qil wa qal. Don't just take from what he said, she said, what he said and what has been said. Read. That's what my grandpa used to always say. My grandpa, who's Eritrean, he used to always say in Arabic, he used to take me to the mosque, and he was a very open-minded man. But he used to go to the mosque a lot. So when I was there, I wasn't interested in reading. But he used to always tell, when I was a kid, he used to always say, Agra, 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 read. I never wanted to read, Now I love reading. The Greek-speaking city-state of Adulis in the western Red Sea coast was a neighbor of other Sabian principalities or settled kingdoms in Akelugzai and Saraya provinces of today's Eritrea. We can find that in Sabbeh's History of Eritrea as well as Travaskis. You can find that information there as well. 1. Aksum, Eritrean or Ethiopian? Eritrean or Ethiopian? Modern Ethiopia. Let's see how far we can go. Okay. Aksum, Eritrean or Ethiopian? Modern Ethiopia claimed to be the successor of the city-state of Aksum, which was the dominant political entity in the region between the 1st and 6th centuries AD. The territories of Aksum were approximately coextensive with modern Eritrea. Travaskis mentions this, as well as Walde Jesus, who quotes him. So it was approximately, the territories of Aksum were approximately coextensive with modern Eritrea. The ancient town is situated only a few kilometers south of the present Eritrean frontier. That civilization's ruins, temples, baths, and towns, which may still be seen dispersed along the route between Aksum and Zula. The modern name for ancient Adulis is Zula. I think it's Zula. The modern name for ancient Adulis. So, that civilization, Aksum, its ruins, temples, baths, and towns, which may still be seen dispersed along the route between Aksum and Zula, meaning Adulis, bear witness to the presence on the plateau at this time of an ordered society which demanded and secured a higher standard of living than any Eritreans or indeed Ethiopians, were to enjoy until recently. You can find that also in Travaskis. So they bear witness to the presence on the plateau at this time of an ordered society which demanded and secured a higher standard of living than any Eritreans or indeed Ethiopians were to enjoy until recently. And the towns between Adulis and Aksum included Kohaito, I think it's Kohaito, Matara, Takonda, and Saim. I don't know them in Tigrinya, so I don't know how to pronounce them properly using transliterations, but I'm doing the best I can. So Kohaito, Matara, Takonda, and Saim. All of them inside the territorial boundaries of Eritrea. It was historically confirmed that Aksum corresponded very little with the modern state of Ethiopia. So it was historically confirmed that Aksum corresponded very little with the modern state of Ethiopia, which is a 19th century creation. In fact, Aksum did not even at its golden age extend southwards beyond the limits of the present Tigray. It didn't go farther than Tigray. Who mentioned this? Stephen H. Longrig, A Short History of Eritrea, a book I'm trying to, in the future, I would like to use to do lessons about, but their publishers are very. It was published at Oxford. Clarendon is Oxford in 1945. Page 13. Stephen H. Longrig, Short History of Eritrea. I like that what I had seen in that book, but I want to get permission to use it in the future. So I've been battling to find who owns this book, because Oxford said, we don't have this book. They said, we'd love to give you permission, they said. Oxford said, we'd love to give you permission, but we don't own this book. So I have contacted the last publishers who came after Oxford, who are known as Bloomsbury, something like that. It was published by Greenwood, I think it was, and then it went to Bloomsbury. Publishers are not always easy to get a hold of. In any case, so in fact, Aksum did not even at its golden age extend southwards beyond the limits of the present Tigray. However, neither Adulis nor Aksum could belong to present-day states or states to be, but to an ancient civilization equally shared among the Hamido-Semitic Habasha, Abyssinians, generally called the Amharas and the Tigrayans, here meaning all Tigrinya speakers. Tigrayans meaning all Tigrinya speakers, not just people from Tigray, but also those Tigrinya speakers from the Kabasa, from Tsaraya, Aklaguzai, Hamasien, those places. Asmara, that Hamasien. So here meaning all Tigrinya speakers, he puts in parentheses, Mr. Waldesus, found in the entire plateau regions of today's Eritrea and Ethiopia. So that's what it was, shared among the Hamido-Semitic Habasha. Why he uses the word Hamido-Semitic, my guess is because those people, the Habasha, are Semitic, but the Amhara, the Tigrayans, and the Tigrinya, these Tigrinya-speaking people from Tigray and Eritrea, these are the same people. Ethnically, they're the same people. They love and hate each other based on politics. That's how it works. So that if Sha'biya attacks Tigray, then there's a problem. If they're good with one another, then the peoples themselves are okay with one another. They intermarry, in my understanding. They intermarry normally, and they're mixed. People in Eritrea, from what I've heard, people in Eritrea who are Tigrinya are mixed with people from Tigray. And similarly, people from Tigray, I wouldn't be surprised, would be mixed with people from Eritrea. It's just they're the same people. Hamido-Semitic, because the Hamitic people, Cushitic, Hamitic meaning Ham, son of Noah, Ham, son of Noah. Cush, son of Ham, son of Noah. That's where Cushitic, Hamitic comes from. Semitic comes from Shem, son of Noah. So it became Sem, the She and the Semitic, meaning those people who are Arabs, Sumerians, Hebrews, Babylonians, Assyrians, Akkadians, if I'm not mistaken. These are Semitic people. So, and then you have now, you have the Tigray, Tigrinya, Amhara. The Amhara, these are Semitic. The people of Hararis are Semitic. Gurage, Semitic. The Hamido-Semitic Habasha, I think that's why he said Hamido-Semitic, Hamido-Semitic, because they are mixed. That might be the reason why. Hamido-Semitic Habasha, Abyssinians, generally called the Amharas and the Tigrayans, here meaning all Tigrinya speakers found in the entire plateau regions of today's Eritrea and Ethiopia. So it did not belong to any, so Aksum was not for any one nation state, or a state to be. Ethiopia, Eritrea, no. Rather, it was to an ancient civilization equally shared among the Hamido-Semitic Habasha. That's what Aksum was. This is true. Of course, their rule, I believe, included people that were not Semitic, if I'm not mistaken, because I think the Bejas were under them and others. So anyway, so that's the first of, yeah. So we'll stop there. That's Eritrea before 1890, but that's just the beginning of it. So this will be the part 1, Eritrea before 1890, part 1. We still have more to go. Next, we're going to be talking about the 5 Beja kingdoms and what comes after it. Until next time, I hope you learned something. Those of you who are of Eritrean and Ethiopian origin, and those of you of non-Eritrean and Ethiopian origin, this is a gold mine. The papers I have printed here are a gold mine full of very beneficial information. Okay, so I hope you find it interesting. We will be traveling on a journey that is full of very interesting and intriguing information. And we will learn about what Eritrea is. Especially now in this time, especially any time, but especially now in this heated era, reheated era, where the cold food has been put in the oven, of Ethiopia wanting to take over Asab. So, which is Eritrea. So, how that's going to go, I don't know. But I hope for the fall of Isaias Afwerki. That's what I hope for. And I hope people are, I pray that people are unharmed. I pray that people are unharmed. I pray that people are in the position of dominance, which they are. The people are always in a position of dominance, not the rulers. It's about the people. So, in any case, next time when we speak, we're going to be talking about the 5 Beja kingdoms, and we will continue talking about Eritrea before 1890. All right, guys? So until then, and always keep safe. Peace be upon all the good people out there. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.